In my opinion, Paper Mario and the Origami King is a very underrated Paper Mario game. It's a game that I feel like didn't necessarily take us back to what made Paper Mario so great, but it's definitely a game that did take a huge step in the right direction. And even though it had some things that it did wrong, it definitely had some things that I thought it did really, really good. And one of the things I was very impressed with was how it handled boss battles. And I'm sorry, I'm going to say it, in my humbled opinion, I really think that the boss battles in Origami King are some of the best that we've seen in the entire series. Maybe not design-wise, but actually how they function and how they work, I thought they were executed great. They had difficulty, they had challenge and puzzle elements that I absolutely love to this day. Once again, a huge thing that was holding the game back, and one of the main problems was the lack of character diversity and the design of the characters and enemies and bosses once again, because Nintendo decided to keep it overall very basic, with very basic Mario enemies and Toads once again, and of course, the bosses, and that's really what I want to focus with today. The boss battles may have been great when it came down to the mechanics and how you actually battled them, but when it came to how they looked, yeah. And that's a clear reason why people love the older games as well. We haven't really had bosses like this since Super Paper Mario, but it's when 1000-Year Door and 64 came out that really showed us some unique designs. I mean, look at all the bosses in the 1000-Year Door, and of course its remake that came out that really fleshed out their design even more. But yes, you have giant dragons, skeletal ghost pirates, and even alien astronauts from space. There's so many crazy designs and concepts, and then we went to this. But thanks to Super Mario Broth on Twitter, we actually can tell what they could have looked like thanks to some redesigns from the official Super Mario Kun manga, which actually redesigned some of these bosses in a new way, which could give us an idea of what they could have looked like. Tape was actually going to be this cool greaser guy that actually rode the tape holder as a motorcycle, which would have been really, really cool. In fact, it would have worked really well with the gameplay also, considering the fact that the tape actually rolls all over the stage like a motorcycle already, leaving tape marks behind, taping sections of the actual game board. Rubber Band was as close as we were going to get to an original looking boss, but still didn't really have a face or any other features to really make it stand out, but it was as close as we were going to get. I mean, look at this, at least it's like a humanoid figure, but it looks like in the actual manga, they turned him into like this girl with little pigtails made out of rubber bands and little hair clips made out of rubber bands and also some eyes and a t-shirt, which definitely does make the character more of a character than just a supply. Then we have one for Hole Punch, which also was going to have eyes, but also a jacket as well, some type of disco jacket, and probably giving him a lot more personality than just that. But thanks to the Harry Gold Show on YouTube, he actually was able to recreate a new design for all of these bosses in the game, making them look a lot cooler than what we actually got. So if you want to see his full video, definitely click the link in the description because there's some really cool designs that I absolutely love from that video. Not even including just the bosses, but also other characters and NPCs as well. Well, would these have truly made the bosses that much better and the game better as a whole? Well, we're going to compare them and we're going to figure out if that's true or not. Let's start off with the Vellumentals, because all the Vellumentals are seriously just giant origami versions of regular animals. Well, two of them are regular animals, the other two are mystical dragons, but we'll talk about that when we get there. Well, the main gimmick of this boss fight is to go around his entire body and take out his arms and then eventually his tail, so that way you can flip him over. Now, Harry takes an approach by still keeping the character in the Mario universe by making them look like they still belong, like an enemy that you could find in another Mario game. And I like this approach because it almost also kind of reminds me of the way the Koopa Troopas looked in Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga with the little bean sprout on their head, but the shell actually resembling a snow mountain is a pretty cool idea, really showing just how big this creature is. Now, one complaint that I keep seeing online is that he's taking away from how the character actually works. Like, it's kind of taking away from the whole point and mechanic of the battle by taking out his arms, because he essentially doesn't have any anymore. But honestly, you just give him the same arms, it still works the same way. He could still go back into a shell and you have to flip him over and it still would work exactly the same, just with a better design. The Water Vellumental makes this extremely easy because there's no weird strange gimmick where you have to keep it being a giant origami dragon. I mean, after all, you just approach it and attack it and dodge its giant water attacks. There's nothing that it really does to make it have to look like this. So you could get very creative, just same way Harry does, and makes a very Mario themed dragon that's based off of the dinosaurs that we've seen in past games, like Plessy and obviously Dory from Mario 64. And I love that little goggle dolphin look, and I think it would actually work perfect for this, where, like I said, the dragon doesn't do anything weird where it has has to stay in its design that it was in Origami King. And the same thing could be said about the Fire Elemental, where it does shoot out some spiky feathers that are made out of origami, and that's really the only thing I could think of because it's still kind of the same premise where you have to get around it and fight it or hit it with water in order to douse the flames. And this still could work even though it would be changed into more of a Paper Mario style of character. The Fire Elemental can still shoot feathers, but this time it's just made out of paper. And then that leaves the Polar Bear, which is literally just a giant origami polar bear who likes to hide himself in an ice imprisonment to protect himself from Mario. Once again, nothing that's really preventing this character from changing its design at all and ruining the whole premise of the battle. I will say probably the only real problem with these bosses is that none of them look intimidating. They all look friendly and fun, like fun NPCs or partner characters, and they don't really look like Master Elemental boss battles, and maybe they could be a lot more angry, but besides that, I love the overall designs. And I guess another big problem is that this game is called Paper Mario and the Origami King, where King Ali is based around origami, and these bosses are supposed to be based around origami. So yeah, it would kind of ruin that premise. It'd be more along the lines of Paper Mario and the Paper King or something, you know what I mean? Let's talk about the actual bosses, because this, in my opinion, is where things could get a little different if they did end up changing the design, because these bosses are very much based around their overall design. For instance, Colored Pencils is very unique as you have to shut the case on him, or the case opens up and he tries to hit you with a barrage of pencils. There's a lot that goes into this overall case of Colored Pencil design. So changing this design would indeed actually change the way the battle works. For instance, Harry transforms the actual Colored Pencil boss into this Colored Pencil wizard guy that actually has a mask based off of the Phantos from Super Mario Bros. 2, which I love this design as a ordinary Paper Mario boss myself, and I still think there's things that they could actually do with this boss. For instance, maybe he can conjure up colored pencils and fire them at Mario. It does take away from what made the boss unique. You can no longer close a colored pencil container, and there's no way to open it up and jump into the inside and find unique ways around the boss itself. You'd just be attacking the boss head on. So this would make a great boss for a true turn-based RPG like 64 or the Thousand Year Door, but not for the Origami King. Rubber Band is slightly different, however, where Rubber Band is really just a big rubber band guy, and at the end of the day, he could actually change his design a lot around and it wouldn't really affect anything. As long as he has his rubber bands, he could probably be changed up a lot. But recreating this enemy as a 2D Paper Mario boss kind of takes away from its 3D aspect, which means you probably don't need to go around on each side of him and have to have that battle arena in the first place. It would once again just be a turn-based RPG, a very basic one, and maybe that's where they're going for here. Maybe Harry actually just wants to turn Origami King into a turn-based RPG like the Thousand Year Door in 64 by recreating bosses that are simple paper enemies that you have to defeat in a turn-based battle, which I could see if that's the case, but once again, it might take away from its 3D aspect of working around an arena. I really love the idea of using a spike as a design very similar to Macho Grubba or Tubba Blubba, which I really love, but maybe they can find a way to make a 3D version of this character instead of just a 2D sprite, which then would look a lot cooler, and still be able to function in Origami King's battle system. Once again, working the same way, Hole Punch, you want to get behind him in order to attack the rubber base piece of the machine, which is definitely what makes this boss so unique, so having a regular character would kind of get rid of this. But once again, I absolutely adore the Dracula Piranha Plant concept of him biting holes in things instead. It does just completely replace the actual Legion of Stationery being the Hole Punch itself. Now, skipping Tape for the moment, he actually does something very unique with Scissors that I really do like. Instead of replacing Scissors entirely with a brand new original character made out of 2D paper, he actually just keeps the scissors in the boss battle itself, but has a 2D character actually holding the scissors as a weapon, which I actually really think that this could work. He has this samurai looking Shy Guy, which fits the theme of the game great, and also using the shears as a sword is a really cool concept. So that way, it feels like you're actually fighting somebody that's using this Legion of Stationery as weapons, and I think that would have been a better story, just having these office supplies be like weapons of legend that these characters use. That would have been really unique and still would have kept the same premise, where he could still walk around and cut different things on the game board and even charge up the scissors in order to cut Mario with them. Now, Granted, that probably still would be a little bit more graphic considering the fact that it's actually a character holding a weapon and cutting Mario in half with that weapon instead of the weapon doing it by itself. But still, if Nintendo's going to have Mario get cut in half, it doesn't matter how it's done, he's still getting cut in half. But yeah, I thought that would have been cooler, and honestly, I think that's a smart way to go. Mind my sloppy crop job of the actual Spike character, but you get what I mean here, where you could actually just throw the actual enemy on top of the stationary, and maybe that's how he's controlling him, by pulling the rubber bands of his head, kind of Remy from Ratatouille style, as he's like controlling him by his hair. Or maybe he's just inside of the rubber bands, and as you break him apart, you then get to battle the actual character that's been controlling him all along. Maybe Hole Punch could be a character that's holding a hole punch, or multiple hole punches, or maybe just one giant one that he's holding from behind or something and using as part of his attack. Maybe just same kind of concept where you just have to keep taking out the actual weapon before you can get to the actual boss itself, being this character or enemy, which would be really cool. Or colored pencils could have that Phanto clown mask guy, but behind the colored pencils that's inside of the case itself, which means you have to open the case in order to find this guy, and you have to take out the pencils or let him shoot the pencils in order for you to have a clear shot at him. So yeah, prying open the case in order to reach the enemy inside would have been a lot cooler. I'm not gonna lie, Tape was one of my favorite bosses in the entire Paper Mario series. I'm not even joking. I loved the music, I loved the atmosphere, and I loved the way they handled how to take out this boss by breaking all sides of the tape holder and then having to fight the tape itself by pretty much unraveling all the tape from the roller, which was just so cool. Harry made a giant ghost-like Boo Genie coming out of the tape dispenser itself, which still could have worked really well, where you still have to take out the base in order to get to the tape itself. The boss might change a little bit after that, but overall it still would have been a cool design to see something like this. Or to simply had some type of Boo creature or character actually hiding within the roll of tape itself, and once you unraveled enough, he would have popped out. Something like that would have worked just as good. Unfortunately, Harry did not make one for the stapler, so I decided to toss my hand at it and see what I could come up with. So naturally, the stapler reminded me of a wild chain chomp, and even to the point where it almost looked like it had a chain chomp eye to it. So I don't know, maybe it had like chain chomps around it, or the entire thing was a one big chain chomp that actually had teeth that were made out of staples. I don't know, something like that definitely could have worked, but at the end of the day, I don't feel like trying to design a whole boss battle around this, so you get what I'm going for. So honestly, there's a whole lot of different options they could have done to spice up these characters more, but I kind of just like the overall manga design that kept it pretty much the same exact creatures and boss battles overall, but just added some type of design to them, whether it be giving them eyes or sunglasses or some type of facial expression, something to kind of enliven them. And it even makes me wonder if Nintendo planned to do something like this from the beginning and it just never fell through, which is pretty interesting. But overall, I still love the way the bosses actually function. I just wish they had better designs overall, and I think it would have made people like the game a lot more and make it more memorable for people if these expressions and these attitudes were actually matched with a really cool design. But I still believe that Paper Mario the Origami King is a really good game with just a couple of little flaws that could get fleshed out to become a really great game. And honestly, the boss battles are some of the biggest highlights for me, not only in this game, but in the entire series. And yeah, I just wish they had a little bit more of a design. But let me know in the comments down below what you think of these designs, and definitely go check out Harry's channel with the link in the description, and make sure you leave a like and subscribe before you head out. And like always, I'll see you all on the next one. See ya, guys.